I should have seen it coming. Looking back, all the signs were there. But when you've built your life with someone, you don't want to see the cracks. You tell yourself it's stress, a rough patch, that things will go back to normal. Stephanie and I have been together for over a decade. We met young, built a life, had 2 kids. I thought we were happy. Sure, we had our ups and downs, who doesn't? But I always believed we were a team. I worked hard to provide for us, and she stayed home with the kids. That was the plan. That was what we agreed on. Then, a few months ago, something shifted. First, it was little things. The way she started dressing differently. Nothing crazy, just more effort, more care in a way that didn't seem meant for me. She'd always been beautiful, but she'd never cared much for makeup unless it was a special occasion. Suddenly, she was wearing it every time she left the house. Then came the late nights. Book club, she said. Just a girls' night. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But she'd come home smelling like a mix of perfume and something else. Something unfamiliar. She was on her phone constantly, always turning the screen away when I walked by. Our conversations became short, her patience thin. When I tried to ask what was wrong, she'd sigh like I was exhausting her and brush me off. I just need space. Space from what? From me? From our kids? I didn't push. I should have. Then one night she slipped up. She came home late, and as she tossed her coat onto the chair, a piece of paper fluttered out of her pocket. I picked it up without thinking. It was a receipt from a hotel. My stomach dropped. I told myself there had to be an explanation, some logical reason that didn't involve the worst-case scenario. So I waited. The next morning, as she sipped her coffee, I casually slid the receipt across the table. She barely glanced at it. Oh, that's from a girls' night. We got a room because we drank too much. She said it so smoothly, like she'd rehearsed it. But I saw the way her fingers tightened around her mug, the way her eyes flicked away from mine just a second too soon. A lie. I didn't call her out on it right then. Instead, I just nodded and let the suspicion fester, let the reality of it sink in. Because deep down, I already knew. I just wasn't ready to face what came next. After that morning, something inside me changed. I stopped taking her words at face value. I started paying closer attention. She thought she was being careful, deleting messages, locking her phone, but she underestimated me. She didn't realize that when people lie, they don't just hide things. They create inconsistencies. She started going out more. The book club turned into dinners with friends, then weekend retreats for self-discovery. Each excuse sounded just convincing enough on its own, but when I put them together, they didn't add up. And then there was the way she spoke to me. Not just distant, condescending, like she was above all of this, like our life together was something she'd grown tired of. One night, after she came home past midnight, I waited until she was in the shower and checked her purse. I never wanted to be that guy, but I needed the truth. Buried under her wallet and makeup, I found a folded piece of paper, a handwritten note. I love the way you make me feel. I've never felt this free before. Can't wait to see you again. No name, just initials. That was it. That was the moment. I felt something inside me snap, but not in the way I expected. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was something colder. I wasn't going to confront her right away. No, that would be too easy for her. She'd lie, twist it, make me feel like I was the one being paranoid. I needed more. I needed undeniable proof. So I played along. I acted normal. I let her think I was still the fool. But in the background, I was planning. I started checking her phone when she was asleep, watching her location, taking note of her nights out. It didn't take long to put the pieces together. There was one place she kept going back to, some upscale bar across town. One Friday night, I told her I was working late, watched as she got dressed up, kissed the kids goodnight, and walked out the door without a second glance. I waited 10 minutes. Then I grabbed my keys and followed. When I got there, I stayed outside, just out of sight. And then I saw her, at a corner booth, leaning in close, laughing in that way she used to laugh with me. But not at me. Not with me. With him. A guy I didn't recognize. But it didn't matter. The way she touched his arm, the way his hand rested on her leg, It told me everything I needed to know. I could have walked in right then, caused a scene. But no, that wasn't the kind of revenge I wanted. I wanted her to feel this like I did. So I walked away, because now I had a plan. That night I barely slept. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling while she slept soundly beside me, completely unaware that I knew everything. It took everything in me not to wake her up right then and throw her out of the house. But no, that would be too easy for her. She needed to feel the weight of her choices, and I needed time to set everything up. The next morning I played it cool. I kissed our kids goodbye, went to work like nothing had changed. But inside, I was a storm waiting to hit. I had a buddy who worked in private security. One call and he set me up with a contact who could dig deeper. Bank statements, call logs, even deleted messages. Turns out nothing is ever really gone. A week later I had it all. She wasn't just seeing one guy. She had a whole little circle of empowered, liberated women hyping her up, convincing her that she deserved more, that being a wife and mother was holding her back, that she had every right to reclaim herself. And the worst part? She wasn't even being careful about it anymore. She truly believed she had me fooled. That same night, I came home, and she was already on her phone, giggling at something. She barely acknowledged me. I sat down across from her. "Steph," I said, "we need to talk." She sighed like I was an inconvenience. "What now?" I placed a printed-out screenshot in front of her. A message from her friend. "You're doing the right thing. Men like him never change. You deserve passion and freedom. He'll never know if you handle it right." Her face went pale. I didn't stop. I laid out bank statements showing charges at hotels, call logs linking her to the same number over and over again, even a few deleted messages that made it painfully clear what had been happening. She stared at them, then at me, and then she laughed. Not a nervous laugh, not an embarrassed laugh. Cold, dismissive laugh. "Wow," she said, leaning back. "You really went full detective, huh?" I felt my jaw clench. "That's all you have to say?" She rolled her eyes. "Look, you don't get it. I needed this. I needed to feel alive again. You and the kids. You've just been holding me back." Holding her back. My hands curled into fists under the table. "So everything we built together, everything I sacrificed, meant nothing to you?" She shrugged. "I didn't ask you to sacrifice anything. It's my body, my choice. And I choose to be happy." I stared at her, trying to understand how the woman I married had turned into this. But I realized something right then. There was no fixing this. No salvaging it. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't even ashamed. I took a deep breath. Then I stood up. "Good," I said, "because now I'm making my choice." Then I walked upstairs, grabbed a suitcase, and started packing. For her. She followed me upstairs, arms crossed, watching as I pulled clothes from the closet and threw them into the suitcase. "You're being dramatic," she scoffed. "What are you doing?" I didn't answer. I just kept packing. She laughed again, but there was an edge to it now. "Oh, come on. You can't be serious. You're actually kicking me out." I zipped the suitcase and turned to face her. "You made your choice. Now, I'm making mine." She blinked, as if it had never occurred to her that there would be consequences. That I wouldn't just roll over and accept this new reality she'd decided on. "You can't do this," she said, voice rising. "This is my home too." "No," I said, my voice steady. "This was our home. And you decided it wasn't enough." She opened her mouth to argue, but I was already moving past her, dragging the suitcase downstairs. She followed, still spitting out half-hearted protests. But I could hear the panic creeping in now. At the front door, I turned back. "I'm not stopping you from being free, Steph. You can go be with whoever you want. Do whatever makes you happy. But you don't get to disrespect me, destroy our family, and still sleep under my roof." She stared at me, a mix of disbelief and anger twisting her face. "You're making a huge mistake." I laughed. An actual, genuine laugh because the absurdity of it all finally hit me. "The only mistake I made was trusting you." I opened the door. She stood there for a moment, as if expecting me to back down, to change my mind. But I didn't. Where am I even supposed to go? She snapped. Ask your friends, I said. I'm sure they'll love to support your journey to freedom. Her nostrils flared. You're really enjoying this, aren't you? I met her gaze, and for the first time in weeks, I felt at peace. I'm done, I said simply. And with that, I stepped back, waiting. She huffed, grabbed the suitcase, and stormed out. I shut the door behind her, and just like that, she was gone. I stood there for a long time, listening to the silence of the house. The kids were at my parents' place for the weekend. It was just me, standing in the wreckage of what used to be my marriage. I should have felt broken, devastated, but all I felt was relief. The silence after she left was eerie. The house, once filled with the sounds of our life together, the kids laughing, her humming in the kitchen, the soft murmur of late-night conversations, was now just empty. I stood there for a long time, staring at the door, waiting for the weight of it all to crash down on me, waiting for regret, for sadness, for something. But it never came. Instead, I felt lighter, like a weight had finally been lifted off my chest. I didn't waste time. I called my parents and told them the truth. Not the sugar-coated version, but everything. My dad was silent for a long time. My mom, on the other hand, let loose a string of words that would have made a sailor blush. Bring the kids here for now, she said firmly. You need space to figure things out. She was right. I spent that night in my home alone, for the first time in years. I expected to feel lonely, to miss her. But instead, I realized how much I had been tolerating rather than truly living. But of course, Stephanie wasn't going to go quietly. The next morning, my phone blew up with messages. First, they were passive-aggressive. So this is how you treat the mother of your children? Real mature. You're going to regret this. Then they turned defensive. You didn't even try to understand what I was going through. You don't own me. I deserve to be happy. And then, predictably, the anger set in. You had no right to throw me out. This is my house too. Except it wasn't. I made sure of that. Stephanie hadn't worked in years. The house was in my name, the mortgage paid by me, the bills handled by me. She had assumed, arrogantly, that she could live one life while keeping a safety net in the other. But that wasn't how this worked. She started reaching out to mutual friends, trying to turn them against me. But the thing about real friends, they see through the lies. And she had burned a lot of bridges on her little journey of self-discovery. Even her own family, who had always been wary of how self-absorbed she could be, took my side. The final blow came when she realized she had nowhere to go. Her empowered, feminist friends? Turns out, they were great for hyping up her choices but weren't so keen on offering their couches when she actually needed a place to stay. I heard through the grapevine that she ended up at a cheap motel on the edge of town. Alone. Good. I wasn't cruel, I wasn't going to keep the kids from her. But I made it very clear that things would be on my terms. She could see them, but she wouldn't use them as pawns to manipulate me. And as far as our marriage went, it was already over. I had my lawyer draft the papers the next day. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about taking my life back. Stephanie didn't take the divorce papers well. I expected that. I knew, deep down, that she had never truly considered the consequences of what she'd done. She had convinced herself that she could have everything, her freedom, her affair, and the stability of a home with me still holding things together. But when she realized I wasn't playing along, that's when the real meltdown began. She refused to sign at first. You're being so vindictive, she spat over the phone. This doesn't have to be like this. Like this? What did she think was going to happen? That we'd just stay married while she went off chasing whatever thrill she thought she needed? That I'd just sit at home, raising our kids while she found herself in hotel rooms with strangers? She still didn't get it. So I laid it out for her. Stephanie, you made your choice, and now you get to live with it. I'm done. This marriage is done. Sign the papers, or I'll make sure the court sees everything I have on you. There was silence on the line. I could hear her breathing, quick and shallow. You wouldn't, she finally whispered. Try me. She knew I meant it. I wasn't the naive, hopeful husband she'd been stringing along anymore. The man who had spent years trying to hold our family together while she slowly detached herself from it. That man was gone. 2 days later, she signed. I won full custody of the kids. She barely put up a fight. Maybe she thought she'd eventually wear me down, convince me to co-parent, in a way that let her pick and choose when she wanted to be involved. She was wrong. I made it clear she could see them but under strict conditions. No introducing them to her flings, no disappearing for weeks and showing up when it was convenient for her. If she wanted to be a mother, she had to prove it. First, she tried. She showed up on time, made an effort. But it didn't last. Because being a mother required effort. And effort wasn't something Stephanie liked to give unless it benefited her. Soon, the visits became inconsistent. Then rare. Then non-existent. The kids stopped asking about her. And just like that, she faded from our lives. Took me a while to adjust. For so long, I had built my world around the idea of being a husband and a father in a complete family. And even though Stephanie had shattered that illusion, there was still a part of me that had to grieve what I thought we had. But grief didn't last forever. One day, I woke up and realized I wasn't thinking about her anymore. I wasn't replaying our fights, or wondering what I could have done differently. I wasn't checking my phone, half expecting another manipulative message from her. She was just gone. And I was okay with that. The kids and I built something new, something stronger. Our home wasn't filled with tension anymore. I wasn't walking on eggshells, waiting for the next argument or the next excuse. I was free. And it turns out, that was the kind of freedom that actually mattered. It's been a year since I threw her out. She's still around, in the way that a bad memory lingers. I hear things now and then, how she's bouncing from one relationship to another, how she still blames me for everything. But it doesn't matter. I'm not bitter. I don't waste my time hating her. Because I won. Not in a petty, vengeful way, but in the way that actually counts. I got my life back. And that's the best revenge of all.